Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Make Support Personal, Inject Relevance into Every Interaction, brought to you by Technology Services Industry Association and sponsored by Coveo. My name is Inject Relevance, your moderator for today. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping items. To maximize your webinar experience, click the question icon in the upper right corner of the registration. Check your system's most recent versions of browsers and /player. Update the most recent version available for the optimal viewing experience. Audio will be delivered via streaming. You will be in listen-only mode and you listen via your computer or mobile device. Webinar controls, including volume, are found below the presenter headshot area. To view your webinar, select your link to proceed to the player, and you can ask questions at any time by submitting your questions in the Ask a Question box on the left side of the webinar player. Feel free to enlarge your slides to full screen at any time by selecting the Full Screen button, which will appear on the top right area of the slide area. There will be an exit survey at the end of today's live webinar. Please provide your feedback on the content and experience by filling out that brief survey. And finally, a link to a recorded version of today's live webinar and access to download the PDF of the presentation will be sent out within the next 24 hours via email. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. You can follow TSIA on Twitter at TSIA Community and use hashtag TSIA Webinar to contribute to today's conversation. I would now like to introduce our presenters today, John Ragsdale, Distinguished Vice President of Research, Service Technology for TSIA, and Jennifer McIntosh, Vice President of Customer Experience for Coveo. We do have a lot of exciting content to cover in the next 45 minutes, so let's jump right in and get started. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Inga. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of relevance and how injecting relevance into every customer interaction can not only vastly improve the customer experience, but also can have some very big impacts on employee productivity and employee effectiveness. So I wanted to open by pointing you to the most recent research report that I published called The Future of Support Interactions. You can find that on the TSIA website. And in that, I talk about these three themes. First, persistent. The fact that today, instead of looking at every touch point with a customer as a one-and-done interaction, that we have to view these interactions as an ongoing dialogue with the customer. So it's a persistent conversation, regardless of the channel that they're using. It has to be personalized. Customers today expect to have the interaction tailored to their environment, their experiences, what they've called about previously. So you can't just have this generic treatment of all of your customers. And finally, intelligence. Intelligence is so important today. Artificial intelligence, machine learning can automate and streamline really everything that we do, as well as adding some very cool capabilities for customers performing self-service. So injecting relevance can fuel the customer experience. And if we think about these three themes of persistent, personalized, and intelligent, all of them are powered by this relevance. On the persistent side, what questions or problems has the customer previously encountered? And we need to take that into account when we're dealing with the customer to make sure we're not asking them to do something they've already tried or informing how we solve this problem compared to maybe a parts failure or an upgrade that they've recently done that's all in customer history. So relevance is very important on the persistent side to make sure that we're giving them actionable advice based on their relevant history. Next is personalization, and this is really taking into account what is unique about this customer's environment. And that not only means what products they're on, what versions they're using, but also there are perhaps completely different use cases for your products between your financial services customers, your government customers, your healthcare customers. So understanding what is unique about each customer environment is very helpful in giving relevant advice and information. And there's a lot around the intelligence piece, and this is where artificial intelligence and machine learning comes in. How have similar problems been solved in the past so you don't have to waste a lot of time trying things that are never going to work? What content has proven the most useful for this question previously? And this is using relevancy analysis that will tell you, well, every time people in the past have asked this question or been concerned with this concept, here's the content they typically end up on, so you can shortcut the process of finding the needed information. And I think also on this intelligence side is identifying experts. And today so many companies are embracing the concept of swarming or collaborative support, in which a support technician owns a problem from cradle to grave. And if it's not a problem they're familiar with, they can't just escalate it to level 2 anymore. They have to identify who are the experts, who solved similar problems in the past, who are the developers that may be familiar with this issue, etc. So you can identify the relevant experts and pull them in to a session as needed. So this is all a little theoretical, but I wanted to give you an example of relevance that is a topic I talk to members about almost every day, and that is relevance in their search strategy. So I just completed my 2018 Knowledge Management Survey. I'm going to be giving you a sneak preview of some of that data now. I'll be publishing the State of Knowledge Management for 2018 in a couple of weeks. But one of the things I track in there is about search strategy and the importance of unified search. So one of the ways that you can vastly improve the success of your self-service site and boost deflection and boost self-service success is introducing the concept of unified search. And that means that if a customer searches the knowledge base for a particular issue, even if it's not in the knowledge base, they're going to see search returns from the customer community, from product documentation, from release notes, from previous cases, etc. So regardless of what repository they're looking at, when they search, they should receive a unified list of matches from every available repository. If you expect a customer to search 5 different repositories to find the answer, it's not going to happen. They're going to maybe search once and then go directly to create a case, which is generating more work for you. So we can see on this slide that the percentage of customers offering a unified search experience has grown from 31% to 38% over the last year. And on the employee side, we've seen an increase of 13%. We're up to almost half of our member companies now offer unified search for employees. And the last time we surveyed our members, there was an average of 12 to 13 separate systems that support technicians access routinely to help customers, and expecting them to know where to go to find the needed information can be a huge drain on productivity. So I'm very happy to see that on the employee side, we're also embracing this unified search approach, which definitely is a big boost to productivity. So a little more on the numbers. Again, this is from my 2018 survey. One of the interesting data points is I ask about when you're solving a customer's issue in support, what percentage of the time do you spend on various activities? Identifying the failing component, researching how to solve the problem, applying that problem to the customer, and documenting what you did to close out the case. And according to the survey, 30% of the time spent on an open case is researching how to solve the problem. And this is one area where relevancy can really make a difference. So by using relevancy analysis, you can identify how has this problem been solved in the past. You can find cases of the same issue that occurred for other customers and how we solved that, etc. And so think about reducing 30% of the time we're spending on cases to practically zero can dramatically improve not only first contact resolution rate, but resolution time, and ultimately boost the number of incidents that each support employee can handle in a shift. So you can vastly improve the scale of your organization with relevancy. Another proof point is a self-service feature, personalized frequently asked questions. So more than half of our members, I think about 58% now, have a static FAQ list on the self-service site. And FAQ lists are wonderful because customers can see and click directly on what they're looking for many common problems. But the issue with those static FAQ lists is that it may include content around products or versions that this customer doesn't even have. So it just becomes noise to them and they tune it out. Personalized FAQs, which our Pacesetter members, only 15% of companies are doing it, but we're seeing it as definitely a big step toward improving your deflection rates. They're filtering those FAQs to only show the customer relevant, frequently asked questions to their environment. And that means everything on that list makes sense to them, and they're much more likely to always look there and hopefully find a quick access to that common question that they're dealing with. And the third one is something about relevancy and being proactive with content. And this is for the customers that don't attempt self-service and go straight to case creation. 36% of our members now take all of the information they're entering in that case, such as required fields, their short description, long description, and they're proactively prompting them with content matches from the knowledge base, from the community, from the product documentation. And we have seen some pretty impressive case studies that companies that introduce that see that customers are finding the right answer and abandoning that case 20 to 30 or even more % of the time. And you know, we get a lot of questions from members about accurate ways of calculating deflection, and that is absolutely a bulletproof deflection calculation. If a customer is in the middle of creating a case and they click on a piece of recommended content and abandon that case creation, you can absolutely consider that as a deflected support incident for your support organization. So I hope I've made the point to you about how persistent and personalized and intelligent interactions all involve relevancy. And I'd like to bring into the conversation now our guest speaker today. Jennifer McIntosh is the Vice President of Customer Experience for Coveo. Jennifer and I have known each other for about 20 years now, and she is an innovator and a thought leader in the subject of knowledge management and a very popular speaker. So Jennifer, very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure to be here, and always a pleasure to collaborate and share with you. I think we think a lot alike, and we've certainly done a lot of sharing over the last couple of years. Well, 20, I guess, as it is now. God, the time is certainly flying. So thanks so much for having me here. Looking forward to really kind of talking, taking a little bit of what you said and just really making that personal, no pun intended, about how how we're doing that. So today, I think we're going to start by talking about the impact of relevance, personalization, and AI, and how it transforms the way that businesses interact with their customers, employees, and partners. And this transformation is happening right now. So, John, you've got some great research there that you pointed to. And, you know, it's all starting to happen because of the capabilities that have really become mainstream now with AI and machine learning. We look like Salesforce and Gartner are both pointing to really growing expectations of customers, and, you know, to the fact that companies are now coming to the conclusion that they will need AI to meet those expectations in a scalable way. And so the good news is that while companies need to meet these expectations to stay competitive and keep their customers happy, there's also significant business benefits from doing so and delivering that more personalized experience. So if we look at really what are the outcomes that we can get from that, we can certainly lower our support costs, which will certainly make all CFOs and bottom line folks happy. Well, but at the same time, creating a higher sense of customer satisfaction. We also can increase our agent or employee proficiency and employee satisfaction at the same time, and really just enable our customers to make better business decisions overall. And so when we look at, you know, what does making support personal really mean? You know, what type of experiences do your customers expect? customers companies and interfaces your customers are interacting with every day are really setting the bar pretty high in terms of expectations of relevance. If you think yourself, many of you, like myself, are consumers of technology such as Amazon or Netflix, for example. And both of these companies, I interact with on a probably far too regular basis. And, they know who I am. They know what I want. They know what I did last. They know what I watched past. They know what I bought past. They know what I might want to watch in the future. They also might want to let me know things I want to buy that I didn't even know I needed to buy. And so, all of these experiences are presented in a very, effortless way. And, as we have this in our consumer world, those expectations, because of these organizations, are really being transformed onto the businesses as well. So people are, have those same expectations that, hey, I have this in my consumer lifestyle. Why can't I have this in my B2B or my work experience with the companies that I have to interact with as well? So, as a business, as an organization, how do you begin to develop on or deliver on those sort of relevance-based experiences? And how do you create those personal experiences for your customers throughout their entire journey with you? So we believe there's a couple of key ingredients that need to be leveraged in order to really deliver relevance. And so John touched on these as well. But first of all, in order to deliver relevance, you've got to have the ability to aggregate and unify the content that exists, right? So we have all of these different silos and systems. Nothing is ever all in one place. So how do we have that reach across to all of those systems without having to go to each individual tool or system to look for the connectivity? So the ability to unify that content, add that with the context. So, really understanding who they are, what they're looking for, where are they coming from, what did they do before, what are they, how do we help really create that notion of context for this particular user to generate a personalized experience. And then finally, the intent, which is really gathered through a bunch of different listening posts or listening signals that really help us understand what a user is trying to do. And so we believe that, pulling all of those three components together is really what delivers relevance. And then to do that in a scalable way, you really need to leverage machine learning and AI. It doesn't happen overnight. I think a lot of people are afraid or worried about how do I go buy me some of that their AI or some of that machine learning, and it doesn't have to be as scary as it sounds. Many customers come to us, and we built this Coveo relevancy maturity model to help people understand that you can start on a path. Oftentimes when we're starting to engage with our customers, many of them are coming from siloed searches or federated searches. And people often say, well, isn't a federated search and a unified search the same thing? And actually, they're quite different. And so when we look at, I'll take a minute just to kind of explain those differences, because I think they're really important to the overall message, is that a federated search, what it does, it can bring back results from multiple different places, but it ranks them independently. So you're getting a big list, but here's all my FAQs, and here's all my videos, and here's all my product documentation, or wherever it may be. And so each one of those would be ranked individually. When we look at a unified experience, what we do is that we can create that secure unified ranking across your ecosystem of content, and we will present the user with the most relevant information for that particular user. And that's really, when you first start with Coveo, that's where you actually get to start. So the first thing right out of the gate, that's step number one. So then we have built this maturity model to help users, as their organizations can adapt to change and their systems start to come online, whether they're starting to use this in their community or their online portal, they're able to really move up this relevancy model up and to the right, which is where everyone wants to go. Let's take a look at a little bit more detail about what this is. So people are interacting with us in many different ways. And these users, there's many different users in your journey, right? And they have different contexts. So if we look at, how most digital experiences are today, it's a very siloed experience, right? We have websites, we have commerce, And I think what I'm seeing in the industry is that people have historically, we've been very good at measuring our marketing funnel and really understanding what's happening in that, that sales funnel. And then, we've gotten really good at understanding the activities that's going on our support portals and our support communities and measuring case deflection, and even for our employees, creating better experiences for them, providing in-application sort of support, or having an internet that has a unified experience on it so they can get access to everything internally. But again, there all continues to be a set of new silos. But if we look at using an insight engine to really unify the relevance across this entire ecosystem, I think this is really where we're starting to see very interesting things happen. And so it's a new way for folks to start to look at things, and so they no longer are just looking at their marketing funnel or their service cloud or community all in isolation. We're able to look at that journey across its entirety and really start to understand the uniqueness of what that entire journey presents to us. So we're able to know that actually interactions that are happening on your corporate website, for example, actually could also be applicable when when a customer contacts you for support. And so you're able to unify that and use those touch points in a much broader context of an entire platform, which really, again, is helping drive that unification message, which is, breaks it down to relevance, intent, and personalization, because you know where they've been, you know what they've done across your entire ecosystem, not just over, your web support site. So the idea here of insight engines that unify, they can do it in 3 different ways, and we look at it through personalized interactions, proactive interactions, and being able to measure those. So let's take a look at these different types of interactions. And the personalization, and John, you mentioned this right at the beginning, what does it look like when it comes from the support experience? And so we have lots of indicators in our CRMs that can help us understand and be able to provide this personalized experience, yet we very often are not doing so. We're not, you can think about the last time that you engaged with a brand of your choice and how personalized was the experience, even though you put in your phone number. When you dialed into that customer, they're still asking you for 700 verification elements of who you are, what you're calling about when you engage with them. And so the idea of leveraging the information you have about your customer really helps to drive this personalization message and make those interactions, what they want, and really help them to drive the behavior to make it a smoother process for the customer. So you need to think about the personalization and the content of what makes sense to the customer, the partner, and employees, and what they need to be successful. And we talked early on about what are some of those business outcomes, and by being able to do this, we can really tie this back to increase in customer satisfaction, because customers are going to be their problems are going to be solved faster. They're going to be, they're going to be happier about it, and your agents as well. If we look at a couple of different examples of how we can actually take this to and apply this, what I'm showing here is an example of the Salesforce Trailblazer community. And a core component to their personalization experience on this particular page is really leveraging machine learning and AI. And you can see I've got 2 different examples here of 2 different users who actually put in the same query, but because of their past experiences and their unique profiles, their results are actually quite different. So the one on the left, the user seems to have pretty standard sort of usage, while the user that's on the right-hand side here suggests that, they may be more focused on Salesforce Lightning technology. And so this capability really allows for us to create a richer, more personalized experience for your customers on their self-service experience with ease, which is wonderful. And it's all done automatically based on the changes in the content and the behaviors of the users and the trends. So we're not simply relying on the profile information that we have in our CRM or any other ERP systems to do this. We're actually combining that with this, behavioral analytics, which is really powered by AI. So, here we have another example where we're looking at VMware, where the customers come to find information about the product. So this is their VMware portal as well. And so they're coming here, and what you're seeing on the page is that they're being presented. They don't even have to do a search, right? So what they're doing is they're presenting the customer information about personalized content before they even type in any search words or keywords. And this, again, is based on who they are and what they have done previously, the products that they own, and the tools that they're leveraging. And so these recommendations are powered by machine learning, and they're tailored to this specific customer. And since they're based on the activity of the customer on new content and based on what others like them have done before, these automatically evolve over time, this is a huge step forward from where we've come before, because if you've ever done any of this type of work, and trying to create these personalized experiences over the past 10 or 20 years, like John and I, that it's been a very manual effort to come in here and try and keep this updated, which is, virtually impossible. It's a date before you can even hit publish. And so now we're moving into, thinking about proactive interactions. And so John also mentioned this, is that, we've got a really strong way of measuring case deflection today. And so what if you were able to, proactively provide content or suggestions of content during the case creation page? And this can be from multiple different repositories. Again, that same sort of unification story of the content presented to the customer in their context, right? And so leveraging this information from across your ecosystem. And so, we're able to do this with case deflection to really understand, in this particular example, that's an entire paragraph worth of content. And one of the other challenges a lot of organizations have faced over the last number of years, is really tagging content and putting the right keywords in, or having relevancy really apply to the natural language of something that someone has written. And you can see here that in this example, Coveo is integrated directly into the Salesforce Lightning Service Console. And on the right, the case description really informs the relevance that we're showing up here in this right-hand panel. So we're able to, make sure that whatever is showing here is really directly related to the customer's context. So that's really, again, driving a much smoother experience. And then finally, how do you measure all of this, right? The measurability of this is really what becomes an important component. And looking at this in a holistic way, you've got to look at all these channels all together. And I think that, like I said at the beginning, people have started or historically been measuring these things independently. And what if we start to put this all together, really look at the whole view and truly understand our metrics? What does this happen? In my experience, the story starts to change. So we understand that one particular part of the journey is actually influencing the results of another. And so how do you start to do that? And so when you look at all of the different metrics and the interactions through those journeys, it helps really to drive those business decisions, and helps us understand what to look for, what do we want to measure, and those measures may change, right? And how do we actively monitor the impact of machine learning on these business outcomes? And we're able to do that now. And so, using the usage of analytics really to measure search activity is a way that your customers are interacting with you. Search, and sure, whether or not it's actually physically putting in a search box like we saw in the Salesforce example, or just presenting customer content in a personalized way, which we saw in the VMware example. All of that is rich data of behaviors that are happening, and we're able to use that in machine learning to help us identify where we have content gaps, to drive and the ability to fill in our content gaps. A lot of people don't even know what customers are looking for, and so this really empowers them to make better decisions and drive the content strategies that they need in order to, improve their overall experience for their customers. So just a couple more examples here on how you can identify those content gaps in the Coveo solution and help you understand what people are looking for, where you have challenges, what content is resonating with folks, what content isn't. And what's the outcomes of that? And so these are a couple of customers who have previously presented with me at TSW on different occasions, and we can see that Medallia was able to really increase their agent proficiency because they were able to find things much faster, to the tune of 34%, which is a pretty significant increase in productivity or proficiency for an agent in your organization, which obviously can relate to a direct cost savings. And for Informatica, they were able to really increase their case deflection, and obviously they're a very technical customer audience who really want to be able to self-service. So this was a great opportunity for them to really drive an improvement in their overall case deflection as well. So the next question that we're often asked is, this is great, Jennifer, thanks for all this, but how do I get started? What do you recommend? Like, how do we start when it comes to making support personal? What kind of foundation do I need to have in place before I can start to take advantage of or leverage artificial intelligence or machine learning in my organization? So just like any other knowledge management program, there's a path forward that begins with being more proactive and predictive. So as you start to incorporate more functionality into your overall customer experience, you start to get intelligence on and insight as well as proficiency. So the first step is really to focus on content. Do you have content? Can you get access to that content? Because without content, obviously, none of this is going to work. And a lot of folks, seem to forget about that part. So it's important to really have a content strategy. And if you don't have a content strategy, that really needs to become your first step. How are we going to maintain content and keep it up to date? Because a search engine, an intelligent search engine, obviously has access to much content, but if it's not being managed and maintained, it doesn't really know, that. So if you're practicing KCS or you're any other sort of knowledge management program, you can understand why this fits in so nicely with an AI-driven roadmap, right? Having quality content makes it much easier to find the content and the focus on the content and the navigation. So once you've done that, you can then start to look at what is the search behavior telling us and giving us some insight on where we have gaps and how I have to prioritize your content development needs. Oftentimes people tell me, oh my God, Jennifer, we know we have big gaps in our content, but we don't know where to even start. Well, it's by starting to put a layer on top of that will provide you insight. So it will give you some ideas on what people are looking for most, where you have gaps in the content, what content's working, what content's not working, and then after that gets a stabilized level, then you're able to start to add more of that content. And so what products do your customers own? What roles do they have within your organization? How can you start to present content that makes the most sense and start to really drive personalization once you have the data and start suggesting what they're looking for, and finally getting into recommending next steps or next sets of content like Netflix and Amazon do for me. So a couple more slots here is that if you haven't seen it yet, Gartner's new Magic Quadrant is out, and they produce this report every year. And this particular one is on insight engines, which really evaluates the best AI and search providers and technologies on the market and helps you make a decision on which one would be best for your needs. And we're quite proud of the position that we've had on this Magic Quadrant for the last 3 years. And so I strongly recommend that you can get the report, and if you're interested in it, it is available for download on the Coveo website. So happy to take some questions, but if you'd like to meet with us and see more about our AI and intelligent search engines, you can get a demo or visit it at one of these upcoming events. Next week we'll be at Dreamforce in San Francisco. We'll have a booth in the Service Cloud Lodge. And then we'll also be next week at Microsoft Ignite in Orlando. And we'll also be at Microsoft's Sitecore Symposium in Orlando, back in Orlando on the 1st of October. And then finally, closing this out with the session at the TSW later in several weeks' time in Las Vegas. So if you can't make any of those events or are planning to attend, we're happy to schedule a one-on-one interview, demo with you and help you understand how Coveo may be able to help you in your particular organization. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to John, ask him if he has any comments, and see if we've had any questions come in from the audience, Inga, that we could answer today.
Well, Jen, you covered a lot of really interesting topics today. There's one in particular, though, I wanted to drill in just a minute, and that was your slide about leveraging this concept of injecting relevance across the enterprise and across the entire customer journey. And I'm definitely starting to see this. Historically, this has primarily been a support topic, but my new data tells me that even professional services, 20% of them have a knowledge base. 54 are storing best practices and lessons learned into some content management systems. So, they are definitely trying to capture more information to help them deliver projects better. And I also wanted to mention that when I'm doing these assessment projects with our members to help them improve their web self-service sites, that I'm seeing a lot more people coming to the table to join in that discussion. Education Services wants to make sure that we're leveraging education content. And as you mentioned on your slide, I'm also seeing sales and marketing getting more involved because they're hearing that prospects are going to self-service in the community to identify companies that they want to work with. So it's part of figuring out who should go on your vendor short list is looking at how strong are the self-service capabilities, because those are so important to customers. So are you saying this, that people across the enterprise are looking for, there's a lot of new use cases for these tools?
Yeah, most definitely, John. I think that this has been a very exciting time. As someone who's been focusing on customer experience for the last decade, it's really exciting to see that we're having these conversations outside of support now. Like you said, training, professional services, those are natural sort of kind of add-ons to what we've already been historically measuring very well in support, but now we're taking that even one step further, like you say. And I think historically sales and marketing has been really good at measuring the funnel, but now many of us are in SaaS situations, and so we understand that the real value of the customer's ecosystem and what's kind of next, and how do we drive that continuous purchase and reuse cycle. So instead of a funnel, we've kind of turned it on its side, and we like to talk about it in terms of an infinity loop, and how do you keep customers in that infinity loop. And like you say, there's a lot of research that's being done long before the customer ever even contacts you, during the sales cycle. So yeah, we're definitely seeing it, and people really anxious and excited to be able to measure this now across the entire ecosystem of their organization.
Well, Inga, I think we've still got some time left for questions from the audience. Do you want to ask a few?
Yes. Thank you so much, John and Jennifer, for a great session today. You shared some really, really valuable and really insightful data today in today's webinar. And Jennifer, Coveo has quite the tour coming up, so wish you all the best, and we look forward to having you at TSW next month. So we are going to the Q&A portion of today's live webinar. If you have any questions for our speakers, please take this opportunity to ask those questions live in the Ask a Question box on the left side of the webinar player. The first question is for Jennifer, and John, if you'd like to chime in. But Jennifer, how can you measure the impact of machine learning on your support metrics?
Great question, and I think that what we're being able to see here is there's a couple of different ways that you can measure the impact of machine learning on your support organization. Like I said, because we have the ability now to see what's happening from multiple different touch points from multiple different people, we're able to really drive the influence of those outcomes. And so with that, we're able to see that there's a reduced handle time, better improved customer experience, but more specifically, we're actually able to dig into the metrics themselves and see what kind of content is being bubbled up to the top, what kind of and what kind of engagement people are using on that. And so, as I showed you in the Salesforce example on the Trailhead website, is that two different users were actually searching for the same different word and being presented a different set of examples, and nothing was used there to drive that other than machine learning. So that's how it can really have an impact or an influence on your overall organization, including your support agents.
If I could just chime in, I know this is stating the obvious, but unfortunately it's something that I see quite often, is make sure that you've got a really good baseline set of metrics before you introduce any new process or technology. We see often that companies kind of wait till the technology's there and it makes it easier to track some metrics, and they've got no before and after comparison to see how big the improvement was. So if for you who are TSIA members, make sure you're participating in our benchmark program. We can help you identify which metrics you have that are maybe behind your peers, and we can point you to technology that can help you accelerate those metrics, but definitely have some good baseline numbers before you do anything, or it will be almost impossible to measure that ROI.
Thank you so much, John. So next question is, so Jennifer, you spoke a lot about case deflection. How can case deflection best be measured?
Well, I mean, this is something I've been measuring for since 2000, I guess, so 18 years. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you, over the last, it's so much easier nowadays to be able to do that. So, in the past, I was probably like many of you who have, if you've been at this a little while, have been trying to make sense of a bunch of nonsense and really try and figure out through a lot of estimation and assumptions on how this was actually, how you could do that. Well, now that we have these wonderful and rich behavior analytics, Coveo has it actually built right in the product. So when you purchase Coveo and you launch it, it comes with a right out of the box a standard set of reports that will help you understand how your case deflection is being measured. So we can actually, because we count and we have tracking on all of the activities that people are doing on your site, we're able to very easily count the percentage of customers that come to your site that actually try to log a case with you, and if we present them with a result, as John was showing early in his session, we're able to count that and mathematically, statistically, very valid way, the customers who have abandoned that process or canceled the process depending on your particular user interface that you've designed on your site, and we're able to count that and really and produce a report. In fact, we've gone to one step further, and if you know your cost per case, which many of you do, you're actually able to plug that in, and Coveo will spit out a number for you that really shows your cost savings. And so that can be often helpful when you're trying to share this with your executive leadership on, what's the ROI or the return that we're getting from leveraging these new systems and processes.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear how much detail you can provide on this. I have to say that it does make me a little crazy when a company is bragging to me about their amazing deflection numbers, and I ask how they measure it, and they say, well, anybody that views a solution for more than 2 minutes and then leaves the site, clearly they solved their problem. And you can drive a truck through some of the assumptions and some of these calculations. So especially if you're trying to get more funding and make a plea for more resources, you've got to be able to build something with numbers to back it up.
For sure. Well, happy to have more conversations at any of those upcoming events that anybody would like to. Ingrid, is there any other questions today?
No, there are no other questions, Jennifer.
Okay.
And just as you mentioned, I think that'd be a great way to kind of follow up and have these conversations in person at these upcoming events that Coveo will be attending. So we are coming to the conclusion of today's webinar. Just a couple of quick reminders before we sign off for today, that there will be an exit survey at the end of today's live webinar. Please take a couple of minutes to provide your feedback on the content and experience by filling out that brief survey. And finally, there will be a link to the recorded version of today's live webinar and access to download the PDF of the presentation that will go out within the next 24 hours via email. I'd like to take this time to thank John and Jennifer for an outstanding session today, and to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us on today's webinar, Make Support Personal, Inject Relevance into Every Interaction, brought to you by TSIA and sponsored by Coveo. My name is Ingrid Triago, your moderator for today, and look forward to seeing you at our next TSA webinar very soon. Take care, everyone.